time for a new generation of leadership in America.
Kamala Harris delivered her campaign's closing argument. That's where we're starting the 7 from the Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Wednesday, October 30th. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. The vice president spoke to a large crowd yesterday from the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. That's the same place near the White House where her Republican rival Donald Trump spoke to his own crowd of supporters on January 6, 2021, before many of them rioted at the Capitol. Harris argued that as president, she would focus on delivering for everyday Americans, but that Trump would fixate on revenge.
America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power.
Harris currently leads in the polls in 4 of the 7 swing states that ultimately will decide the election. But a new Washington Post Schar School poll found that 2/3 of swing state voters are not confident Trump would accept a loss, and a majority of them say they fear violence if Trump loses next week. Number 2. Elon Musk's plan to cut $2 trillion in U.S. spending could cause chaos. As I mentioned yesterday, the billionaire chief executive of Tesla and SpaceX has been going all out to help Donald Trump's campaign. At a rally in New York last weekend, Musk promised to identify at least $2 trillion in cuts as part of a formal review of federal agencies that he would carry out under Trump if he wins. That's an enormous figure, and it would require decimating an array of government services, including food, healthcare, and housing programs. It could also erode funding for programs that lawmakers in both parties say they want to protect, from defense to Social Security. Yesterday, Musk appeared to acknowledge the economic risks of his proposal. He agreed with a post on X that his plan would cause financial markets to tumble before the situation later improved. And in other news, President Joe Biden sparked a debate over comments he made to CNN. He was talking about a comedian at the Trump rally in New York who referred to Puerto Rico as a, quote, floating pile of garbage.
They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Tina is unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
The White House says Biden meant that the comedian's racist comments were garbage, but Republicans claim he was saying that Trump's supporters are garbage. Number 3. The U.S. is being inundated with reports of American weapons being used to kill civilians in Gaza. The Biden administration has received nearly 500 of these reports from international aid organizations and other witnesses. Dozens of the reports include photo documentation of U.S.-made bomb fragments at sites where scores of children were killed. But according to people familiar with the matter, the administration has failed to comply with its own policies requiring swift investigations of these claims. And at least some of these cases probably amount to violations of U.S. and international law. Yesterday, an Israeli strike in northern Gaza killed at least 93 people, according to Gaza authorities. The U.S. is pressing Israel to explain that attack. Number 4. The U.S. economy probably had another quarter of strong growth. New federal data this morning is expected to show that U.S. gross domestic product grew between July and September at an annualized rate of 3%. If so, that means that GDP remains on a 2-year growth streak. Experts say it's been fueled by consumer spending. Despite inflation, Americans have continued to shell out for a range of goods and services, including cars, dining out, and travel. The economy's continued growth offers a bit of good news for Vice President Kamala Harris, just days before the election. She and Donald Trump have both campaigned heavily on economic issues. For more, check out our site after 8:30 a.m. Eastern today. when the official data will be released. At least 250,000 Washington Post readers have canceled subscriptions in recent days. That's our fifth story. On Friday, the Post's CEO and publisher Will Lewis announced that its editorial page would end its practice of endorsing presidential candidates. For decades, presidential endorsements have been made by the Post's opinion staff, which operates independently from the newsroom. The Seven is part of the newsroom, and the stories we use and talk about come from the newsroom too. The decision to end presidential endorsements was made by the Post's billionaire owner, Jeff Bezos. He said it was aimed at restoring public trust in the news media. But it clearly angered many Post subscribers. We reported yesterday that at least 250,000 subscribers have canceled since the decision was announced. So I'm going to be pitching you even more often than in the past to subscribe to the Washington Post. You can get a year's access for just $40 right now. Go to washingtonpost.com/subscribe. Number 6. The AI boom could unleash a surge in electronic waste. Leading tech companies are spending heavily to build and upgrade the data centers needed for their artificial intelligence projects. But that means they're also discarding older computer chips and equipment. And research published Monday warns that could lead to a massive increase in e-waste. If the AI boom continues, it found that by 2030, the extra waste generated could amount to the equivalent of throwing out 13 billion iPhones annually. Most e-waste is not recycled. It ends up in landfills. It's also often exported to lower-income countries, where it can expose laborers to harmful substances. This is just another reason that tech companies are facing scrutiny over the environmental costs of AI, along with the huge amounts of energy and water it requires. And at number 7. British police are investigating the theft of 24 tons of Cheddar cheese. This month, a London-based distributor of fancy cheese reported that it had been the victim of a sophisticated fraud. It said 950 wheels of 3 award-winning artisanal cheddars had been stolen. And it's good stuff. The stolen cheese is said to have been worth almost $400,000. The company, called Neal's Yard Dairy, said the alleged scammer had posed as a legitimate wholesale distributor for a major French retailer. The company delivered the cheese before realizing the fraud. Yesterday, London police said they were investigating the alleged cheese heist, but no arrests have been made. So if you happen to be in London and are offered a suspicious-looking wheel of luxury cheese, you should probably inform the authorities. All right, you're all caught up. As we get closer to the election, you'll want to check out the Campaign Moment podcast and newsletter from my colleague Aaron Blake. The latest episode takes a deep dive into the fallout from Trump's Madison Square Garden rally in New York that I mentioned earlier in this podcast. Look for the Campaign Moment wherever you listen to podcasts, and find the newsletter by searching the Campaign Moment on our website. I'm Hannah Jewell. I'll meet you back here tomorrow.